Hi everyone, it's Harper, and welcome to my first ever Booktube video. Well, actually my first YouTube video at all, but that's beside the point. I am going to be sharing with you all the books that I read in November. November was a really interesting month for me because, like many people experiencing this pandemic, I was laid off due to COVID and I had a lot of free time. I'm very used to working 40 hours a week and I didn't have to do that this month. So I just filled a lot of my time with reading a ton of books. Well, just a lot more than I usually read. So this month I read 7 books. And I actually really liked all of them. My lowest rating I think is a 3. So I was really excited about all the books that I chose to read this month. And yeah, let's just dive right in because I don't want to waste any time. So the first book I read was Needful Things by Stephen King. This book I gave a 4 out of 5. It was a big one. This was definitely a large book to start my month off with, but I ate it up in like 3 days. I really liked this book. It was definitely a super intense page turner like most Stephen King's. I thought this was going to be less exciting because I think it's like one of his lesser well-known books, but I was pleasantly surprised. There's a shop owner named Leland Gaunt who opens up a new business in Castle Rock, which is this little town. If you're not familiar with Stephen King books, he likes to write in very similar places throughout all of his books. So this is in a really small town. Brand new storefront opens up, and basically, I don't want to give too much away because I like the mystery of it. That's kind of my favorite part of Stephen King books, but basically what happens is you can buy anything in his store, but there's no set price there's no physical money set price, but there are other prices to be paid for these items that people absolutely have to have. So basically just chaos in this town ensues at the hands of Leland Gaunt. A lot of really crazy stuff happens throughout the entire book. And then, yeah, the only thing that I didn't love about this book was that the last really, really small portion of this book, I think the last like 15 pages, the last couple chapters, were very like happy ending, and I don't need that in a Stephen King book. That doesn't really vibe with me. I like a good scary unsettling ending, and for such a large book where 90% of it, 98% of it is chaos and tragedy, the last pages being so like happy and everything's okay kind of turned me off a little bit. I was like, if this would have ended 15 pages ago, perfect. But it didn't. So, whatever. But it was still really, really good. A page turner, amazing. That was my first book this month. My second book that I read this month is The Ruins by Scott Smith. I've heard a lot of controversy around this book. People either hate it or they love it. And I really loved it. I loved it. The characters are very flawed, which makes what happens to them a lot easier to accept, kind of. That sounds really callous, but it's a well-written book. It has like a really intense thrill throughout the entire book, plus some really nasty gore that I have never read. Like the type of gore and the type of fear that this storyline has is really interesting, and I've never read it anywhere else. Like when I first started reading it, I was like, okay, this concept is really weird and I don't think it's gonna work. It sounds like stupid, but he made it work. So basically what happens, there's 4 young adults, early 20s, who go on a vacation and they meet some new friends, and one of their new friends' brother has gone missing, and so they go to these like Mayan ruins to find the ruins. So they're trying to find their new friend's brother, and chaos ensues for about 400 pages. And the thing about this that I love, that I didn't love in Needful Things, is that this really doesn't have a happy ending. So if you're looking for a happy ending, you're not going to find it here. But I really appreciated that, because if there was a happy ending, it would make it really unrealistic. Like if this was actually happening, how would you ever make a happy ending out of this? It's impossible. So I like that it's really sad kind of at the end, where it's just kind of like, yeah, well, you're not going to like it. But I loved it. So I gave that book a 4 out of 5. Also, I think the writing is really good. I love a fast-paced thriller. I love gore. It was perfect for me. So moving on, after The Ruins, this month I read The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. This is a thriller, mystery, murder mystery type book. If you love thrillers, I think this is a must read. I'm surprised it took me this long, because I love horror, thriller, mystery, murder books. So I don't know why it took me so long, but I read this book in a day and a half. I mean, it was such an easy read because the mystery was so, I don't know, just so good. Like, it was such a page turner, super easy to read. The only problem I had with it is that I did guess one of the twists. So I was like, oh, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I kind of hate that, but whatever. But I think there's like 3 twists. I guessed one, and then the other 2 actually really did surprise me. So that was really good. This is about a therapist named Anna Fox, and she has gone through some severe traumas in her life that have resulted in her having extreme agoraphobia. And so she's been locked in her house for 10 months and struggling to self-medicate with alcohol and abusing her prescription drugs. And while she's in her home and looking out of her beautiful New York house, she sees something that she is not supposed to see. And the rest of the book is just, did she see it? Did she not see it? How is she going to do anything about it, because she can't leave her house? It's really interesting that I used this book to like escape the hardships and like my emotional unrest right now, because this is literally everyone's problem right now. It's like, oh, well, we're all stuck in the house. So why? This made me very anxious. I was like, oh my God, am I ever going to leave my house? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it was really good. It was really fun. I like a fast-paced thriller, quick read. Yeah, I gave this a 3 out of 5. I loved Anna. I really liked her character. I was very upset throughout the whole time. Like, I found myself reading it and then like having to take a deep breath. And I was like, when was the last time I took a breath? I've been holding my breath the whole time. So yeah, it's good. It's just a nice, quick little thriller. I loved it. Okay, so after that book, I decided to take a little bit of a left turn as far as thriller and horror books go. And I read Dune by Frank Herbert. Oh, you guys, I loved this book. This was my 5 out of 5 for the month. I mean, and maybe for the rest of my life. I loved this book. It's like, it's so hard to explain. I don't read sci-fi and I don't read fantasy. And I know y'all don't really know that about me because this is the first time you guys are getting to know me. But like, I've never really been into it. And almost all of my to be read for December and forward is fantasy, sci-fi, because if it's like this, I can't get enough. If you don't know, if you haven't heard about this book, it has a lot of, I don't want to say controversy, but there's a lot of either you love it or you hate it. I haven't met a lot of in-betweens. People either get like maybe a quarter of the way through and they're like, I fucking hate this. This is way too boring. Or people are ranting and raving about it forever. I am the latter. The way Frank Herbert writes a planet, I mean a whole universe basically, because you have a bunch of different like planetary organizations that are kind of like at war, sort of. It's breathtaking. I was fully engrossed in this book. I did supplement with the audiobook, which I think helped me a lot because I can understand how it can be kind of off-putting by the length and the depth to it. However, if you can kind of like be patient and also are down to use the index, there's like a large like appendix in the back that helps a lot with all the characters and their relations, and also like there's language that is completely made up just for this universe. You are going to be so rewarded. This is like the most enthralling book I've ever read. I bought the second book at like maybe like 3/4 of the way through because I was like, I can't imagine not having immediate access to the next book. This book follows a soon-to-be Duke, Paul Atreides, who has basically inherited this planet called Arrakis, which is a desert planet, which is where we get the title of the book, Dune. There's lots of dunes there. It's really not great for harboring life. It's very extreme. There's a lot of extreme weather, lack of water, huge like sandworms that will totally kill you. Basically it just follows his trials through navigating this really shady hierarchy of business owners that are profiting from this thing called spice that they take from the sand in Arrakis. There's a ton of double crossing, backstabbing, murder, assassinations. It's intense. There's so much going on in this book. There's so many people that you need to like get to know and understand like what their motivations are to really insert yourself into this dynamic. It's a lot. It really is. The audiobook helped me so much. But wow, it was worth it. And I can't wait to read the next one. So this is my 1 5 out of 5. This was my favorite this month, easily. I can't say enough good about it. I think this might be my favorite book ever. I don't know. I'm still deciding. It's looking good. So the next book that I read in November was The Troop by Nick Cutter. This follows 5 boys on a Boy Scout trip to a little island off of a coast in Canada, somewhere in BC, and basically they come in contact with an infectious disease. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give it away. I think the surprise of this book really caught me off guard and therefore made it amazing and disgusting. So disease and havoc ensues, as well as a very clear Lord of the Flies kind of dynamic between the boys. So you have a lot of kind of emotional issues going on, as well as very clear health issues, and basically they just have to fight for survival while battling each other as well as this disease. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 because I loved the way the characters were written. I think when you're writing about dynamic problems between humans, you have to write those characters well, because I want to understand why they're motivated to act the way that they act. That's what engrosses me in a book. So I think Nick Cutter really did that justice. There's a lot of background about the trauma that each of the kids have gone through. You really understand the in and outs of the way they think, which helps you kind of anticipate what they're going to do, but also there's still that element of surprise because there's like this disgusting backstory that is just like horrifying, really gross. If you get like yucked out really easily, I wouldn't recommend this book. But if you like just a nice classic old horror, this is perfect for you. So yeah, I give this one a 4 out of 5. Amazing. Would recommend it. The 6th book I read this month was Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is about a young woman in her early 20s in 1950s Mexico City who gets a letter from her cousin who is living in a mansion with her relatively new husband and his family. And it's a very distressing letter. It's basically a cry for help. And so she is sent off by her father to go watch out for her cousin and take her to safety if she needs it. This book is really good. I enjoyed the storyline. I enjoyed the characters. I think that this is a great introduction to thrillers because it's more eerie than anything else. I wasn't, at no point was I scared, and I wasn't as inclined to have to know what happens next, or like I'm not going to get any sleep like The Troop or The Woman in the Window. I was kind of just like, this is weird and uncomfortable, and I don't know what's going on, but I know I don't like anybody in this mansion. Like, yeah, it was weird. But I really like the main character, Nomi. She is really strong. She speaks her mind, but also she has a lot of strength to kind of like hold herself back, because there's so many instances that she like keeps her cool that I would have freaked out, and I was freaking out while I was reading it because I was like, girl, you need to be like throwing a fit right now because things are so weird. Yeah, the storyline is like really interesting. I've never read anything like it. It's really cool, and it's just a cool, like, it's a cool setting, and I think I heard that it was going to be a series or a movie. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but I think that's honestly the best idea, because a lot of the allure of this book to me was the visuals that it gave me. Super creepy, like mansion in the 50s. That's amazing. Everybody loves a creepy mansion in the 50s. That's perfect. Tensions are high. But I just, like I said, I appreciate like a little bit more of a fast-paced, shock value type of book. So this has a lot to offer. It just wasn't like a 4 or a 5 out of 5 for me. But it was amazing, and I would totally recommend it. I actually recommended it to my roommate, who isn't, she gets like pretty scared by like horror movies and spooky stuff. So I was like, hey, if you wanted to dip your toe into something a little bit creepy, this might be a good start. So the final book that I read this month was Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. And I do not have enough good to say about this book. It was amazing. I haven't read really any fantasy, so I was excited about this because a lot of people have a lot of good to say about the inclusion in this book and the way it just includes a wide range of characters as far as gender and race and sexual orientation, which I think is really important, because I have found that so many fantasy, sci-fi, fiction, honestly, like a lot of like frontline books that, you know, like Barnes and Noble and big mainstream bookstores are pushing, lack a lot of diversity, which is sad because humans are very dynamic creatures, and that makes for a great story. Just write about real people, you know? So this is actually, I'm going to read a little bit. So it's set in what Rebecca Roanhorse wanted to portray as the pre-Columbian Americas. That's really cool because that is an environment that isn't really like written about a lot in sci-fi and fantasy. And it basically follows 3 different storylines. Okay, so this is a really dynamic book and I don't want to give anything away, and I don't think I can explain it well enough without giving things away. So I'm just going to read the inside cover to you so that I don't like mess anything up about this book. So the inside cover, I'm reading right here, says, in the holy city of Tova, the winter solstice is usually a time for celebration and renewal, but this year it coincides with the solar eclipse, a rare celestial event prescribed by the sun priest as an unbalancing of the world. Meanwhile, a ship launches from a distant city bound for Tova and set to arrive on the solstice. The captain of the ship, Ziala, is a disgraced teak whose song can calm the waters around her as easily as it can warp a man's mind. Her ship carries 1 passenger. Described as harmless, the passenger, Serapio, is a young man, blind, scarred, and cloaked in destiny. As Ziala well knows, when a man is described as harmless, he usually ends up being a villain. Crafted with unforgettable characters, Rebecca Roanhorse's epic adventure exploring the decadence of power amidst the weight of history and the struggle of individuals swimming against the confines of society and their broken pasts is the most original series of the decade. That was a mouthful. So yeah, this book is great because it's definitely a page turner. This is the first in the Between Earth and Sky trilogy. I hated the way this book ended, in the sense that it leaves you on such a giant cliffhanger, and I was turning the pages like a just mad woman because I really wanted to know what happens, and then it just ends and I'm like, well, you know where I'll be, right here waiting for the second book to come out. I'm a little bit salty about it, but it's so good. This just transported me to a whole new world. This is what I needed this month. I loved it. You can just, the visuals of being on the ocean with, you know, with this like sea captain, and then being in this holy city of Tova. There's all these different images that just transport you there, and it's really beautiful. I could not recommend this book enough. This was definitely my second favorite book after Dune, but I gave this a 4 out of 5. It was amazing. Love it so much. So yeah, this month was, like I said, really great for me. I read a lot of books really quickly. I enjoyed all of them. I didn't have any books that I was like, wow, I just really want this to be over. Yeah, my favorite book this month, very obviously, was Dune. It was amazing. This is my favorite book of maybe all time. And I think possibly my least favorite book was Mexican Gothic. I didn't dislike it, like I said, but, you know, as far as the ranking goes, this one I got a little less of a cool vibe from. But that's just me personally. Yeah, so that feels like it's about it. Stay tuned, because pretty soon I'm going to film I have a huge haul from October and November, because I just bought way too many books over the past couple months. And I'm also going to do my possibly December TBR either today or tomorrow. I might film it. So stay in touch for more videos. I am having a really good time with this. So yeah. Ask me questions in the comments. Subscribe. Click that little bell down there that gets notifications. I don't know. What do YouTubers say? But yeah, ask me questions about myself in the comments. I want to get to know you all. I want you to get to know me. Tell me what your favorite and least favorite books of November were. I want to hear it. Okay, bye everybody.